how important it is for the entire Republican Party to understand that the MAGA coalition, so the coalition that got on board with President Trump in 2024, maybe there's a better way of talking about this, because people have to understand that there's MAGA, but there's other elements of it. There's tech, there's MAHA, there's populists, there's workers, there's all of these various things. So it's beyond just, quote unquote, your core Trump supporters. We're on with Matt Gaetz as well as Kenny Cody from Human Events. Matt, do you understand what I'm talking about when I say that? It's what there's the MAGA coalition, but it's bigger than just MAGA. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Well, sure. For a political movement to be successful, you have to embrace addition, not subtraction and division. And frankly, it came into sharp relief in this discussion we had over the 12-day war, where people like you and I were encouraging foreign policy realism, encouraging a humble reflection on our recent history of regime change wars in the Middle East. I think that's true to President Trump's goal and certainly the outcome here. But then you had the regime change folks like Mark Levin who are out there saying that anything short of toppling foreign governments was somehow a betrayal of MAGA. And there is like the core heartbeat of the America First movement, the people who've been with President Trump and worked to see that his vision has come to fruition. But then you do have these other components of the coalition. And look, there are things in this bill that I think tease out some of the differences. Take, for example, the moratorium on AI. A lot of the tech bros want to see that moratorium in place because they don't want to live in a world where they've got a server somewhere in Louisiana and are unaware of some state novel restriction or regulation that could impair their global or multi-state activities. But then you've got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene who say, look, I am worried that AI could be a job eater in my state if my state legislature wants to ask these questions and approach these policy challenges. I want them to have the freedom to do so under our federalist system. So even that question is like dividing some of the core of America First from some of our new arrivals.
Well, and by the way, when you mentioned Mark Levin, he attempted to do this at one point. He called this into question. He said, this is real MAGA. So he gets to define what real MAGA is, which which is funny so because this is a guy who didn't support Trump in 2016 or in 2024 in the primary and gave a speech at CPAC saying that he wouldn't support Trump in the general. But it spikes the broader conversation of what is real MAGA. And I think that, look, I mean, there's no more credibility that I think this guy can lose that he hasn't already lost in this debate. But when it really, the broader question, I think, for all of us is there's a lot of people, and Matt, I'm sure you saw this when you were in town, there's a lot of people in D.C. who thinks that being MAGA means doing normal Republican stuff but just with like a little bit more swagger or something like that. And that's not what it is it?
No, President Trump led a fundamental realignment of politics on the right. We had been told by people like Paul Ryan that we could invade everywhere and invite everyone. We were told that the trade deals it would be okay if they hurt our middle class so long as they built up the middle kingdom. And President Trump on immigration, on trade, and on foreign policy did not just offer the Republican Party a few corollaries. He fundamentally realigned our movement for the better. And by the way, if he hadn't done that, we would still be losing, right? If we were still running some version of Mitt Romney, that would not have been sufficiently attractive to enough working class people to deliver victories. So for those who want to like shake the Bush family tree again and see what falls out, I would ask, like, what about winning is so off-putting to you? And don't you realize that the country club version of republicanism that sold out the people here will not survive in a world where information is more democratized and people can educate themselves on the issues? And so it is funny when people think that they're the digital hall monitors of what constitutes real MAGA. But, the foreign policy issue is critical also in this respect, Jack. If you look at the people who betrayed Trump over the years, it's always the neocons, right? You can almost lay a foreign policy paradigm over the likes of the Jim Mattises, the Rex Tillersons, the John Boltons, the John Kellys. They're
McMaster.
all the neocons who kind of slipped into the movement. And if those folks are looked at with, I think, a good deal more skepticism, Trump probably has a more durable path to the greatest legacy ever.
I think that's exactly right. Kenny Cody, we've got a couple more minutes, but Kenny, walk us through that core promise of populist nationalism and how it's totally different from neoconservatism or conservatarianism that was peddled by the likes of Bush, Romney, McCain, and Ryan.
Well, I think that the traditional neocon establishment Republican hates the idea of going out and talking to everyday people, middle-class people, about the issues that mean the most to them. I've always described in articles and when I talk to people about the Republican movement, it is not about necessarily, populism isn't an ideology, it's a tool. It's listening to the middle class, it's listening to the issues that are the most important to people, such as fair trade deals, such as mass deportations, illegal immigration, and an over-influx of mass migration into the country. And I think that's why we've had such a success. These establishment Republicans do not understand that this is not the Bush-era Republicanism of the past. That hasn't won since 2004. That's not going to win in the future. And we have to be able to expand our horizons. This old idea of Republicanism that we're going to put the corporations on the forefront, that we're going to put the lobbying and consulting firms and their priorities on the forefront when we pass policies, and allowing them to dictate leadership positions, allowing them to decide congressional primaries, senatorial primaries, local primaries, or what have you, are done and over with. The modern American voter is the most important vote within the GOP. It's the most important vote in the MAGA movement. And the MAGA movement has expanded, like you said, to MAHA, like you said, to anti-interventionist foreign policy.